The business of consulting is all about guaranteeing a successful implementation of a new feature, process, or tool. This process is predicated on the correct implementation and execution of the consulting project. And in order to guarantee the successful execution of that project, modern consulting firms have designed a very standardized process to get the client and the consultants aligned and performing satisfactorily. I mean, think about it. What a consulting firm sells is a new process or the setup of a new technology, yes. But mainly, they want to achieve a successful knowledge transfer from the firm to the client. Imagine what it would be if each new project had to reinvent the consulting wheel. When and how do we communicate with the client? What can be considered a deliverable requirement? Who gets to define the technical implementation? What exactly are the knowledge transfer requirements? All of these questions are generally answered beforehand by the senior team of architects or managers who design the process. Today, we will look at one simple 4-stage example of a consulting process. Bear in mind that this is not the only process that you will find out there. Almost every company has designed or tweaked a process to satisfy their own individual needs. But this is a good and straightforward example of how a consulting project is structured. Thank you for watching Rebel Economics. If you're currently enjoying our content, it may be a good time to hit the like and maybe even subscribe. We have many more videos about consulting and career advice, as well as business and economics that I believe you will like. But with all of that being said, let's jump into the first stage of every project, the discovery stage. So we have talked about before about how important it is for consultants to be good communicators. This early stage is perhaps the one where those communicative abilities will be tested the most. Consultants and analysts at this stage must make sure that they can obtain as much information as possible from the client. What are their objectives with the project? What are the challenges that they are facing? Who are the key stakeholders that should be contacted? What would mean a successful project from the perspective of the client? All of these questions are primordial and necessary to get answered. Without a clear structure of what the client wants and hopes to achieve with the project, no further progress can be made. After listing all of the requirements and objectives of the project, the consultants will have a new job. Translators. They need to transform the fuzzy requirement proposed by the client into the language of consulting and the process or technological features that will be implemented. Now, it's important to note that this translation needs to occur not because the client does not know what he wants, but because some of these processes or technologies lie outside of their operational focus, and in many cases, the client won't know what is possible and what would require intensive retooling of processes or expensive custom development of a technological solution. After these requirements have been outlined and translated into actually implementable possibilities, we jump into the next stage. The planning stage takes the process of specifying a client's needs to the next level. Here, defined requirements from the previous stage will be turned into actionable tasks and assigned to consultants or analysts. It is important that these tasks present a clear definition and rationale as to why they are being performed. For example, in the Agile project methodology, something we will talk about more in another video, exists the concept of user stories, as a script and guide to write tasks or tickets in the planning stage. A correctly written user story outlines the following about each task: who requires this functionality or process, what is required, and what is the objective of this new functionality. The description of the user story, therefore, goes something along the lines of: as a sales manager, I require a new report to measure the number of deals closed last month so that I can have a better overview of our closing rate. Once all of the user requirements have been translated to specific realizable needs and defined as user stories, the implementation can start. The implementation stage is probably the stage that varies the most across companies, mainly depending on which type of project management model the company is following. Two of the most popular project management models are the Agile and Waterfall methodologies. Now, we will talk more about them in other videos, but a brief description is useful here. In a project that follows the Agile methodology, the deliverables and tasks go through a process of iteration. What this means in practice is that some tasks, especially those of an architectural or more complex nature, will iterate through the planning and implementation stages, adding a few changes to each solution based on feedback received by the client. In the waterfall methodology, however, the planning stage is much longer and all requirements must be specified beforehand prior to jumping into the implementation stage. This extends the planning phase, but greatly reduces the need for iteration in further stages. Basically, however the user stories are written, so they will be implemented. This process, both in Agile and Waterfall, is very flexible, and many times the resulting implementation phase will be a mix of both. Once every agreed process or functionality has been implemented, the optimization or post-implementation process can start. In this process, the consulting firm, and you as a consultant, will have to focus on the following 3 points. Firstly, gathering feedback. The first point will be to gather feedback from the client about their satisfaction with the implementation and new processes, and set the KPIs in place to measure quantitatively how performance improves after the process. Secondly, knowledge transfer. The second point to pay attention to will be the process put in place to guarantee the knowledge transfer. Once the functionality has been set up and the processes are up and running, consultants don't just call it a day and leave. They are also responsible to ensure that there is a safe transfer of knowledge. If this step is ignored, the client would only have received an expensive rod without actually being taught how to fish. Knowledge transfer is probably one of the most fundamental and yet overlooked aspects of consulting services, and getting it right will mark the difference between a successful and unsuccessful project. And finally, optimization. After the employees at the client company have been taught and feedback has been gathered, the optimization of the process implemented starts. Perhaps an extension of the contract is required to offer further support, perhaps changes need to be made to some implemented process. What is important is that this stage is used to guarantee client satisfaction. And so, we have reviewed the standard model of consulting. As mentioned before, there are as many processes out there as there are companies offering consulting services. However, knowing about these steps already gives you a solid understanding of the logic behind consulting processes. This has been our final video on the consulting series. I hope you enjoyed it and learned quite a bit about the business of consultancy services. If there is one episode that you missed or want to watch again, check out the consulting playlist that we have curated just for you. You can find it in the description and right on the screen. Besides that, please consider subscribing if you have found value in this series, and drop by our channel to learn about other business and economic topics, like why Pokemon could become an infinite franchise or why the euro might have been a mistake for the EU. Thank you once again for choosing our channel, and we will see you in the next one.